one of the most famous wonders of the ancient world, may never have stood in Babylon at all. The strangest part is not that the gardens are missing. It is that the clues may point to another city, another king, and a mistake that lasted more than 2,000 years. Ask people to name the 7 wonders, and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon almost always make the list. In our minds, the scene is set already. Tall terraces, palm trees and vines, water pouring down stone levels above the hot Mesopotamian plain, and below them, the great city of Babylon, with its walls, temples, and royal palaces. It feels certain, almost too certain, because when archaeologists went looking for this wonder in the place where history says it should be, they ran into a problem. The gardens that became one of the most famous images of the ancient world left behind no clear ruin, no secure inscription, and no agreed location. For a monument so celebrated that silence is hard to ignore. At first glance, Babylon seems like the perfect home for the gardeners. In the 6th century BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar II rebuilt the city on a huge scale. He raised temples, strengthened walls, expanded palaces, and turned Babylon into one of the great capitals of the ancient world. Later, Greek and Roman writers placed the gardens there, and one early tradition, linked to the priest Berossus, says the king built them for a queen who missed the green mountains of her homeland. It is a strong story. A powerful king, a homesick queen, a garden lifted into the sky, but a good story is not the same thing as proof. And once we move past the legend, the ground under Babylon starts to feel less solid. That uncertainty matters because Babylon is not a shadowy site known from scraps. It is one of the best recorded royal building programs in the ancient Near East. Nebuchadnezzar left inscriptions bragging about his works. He named walls, gates, temples, and palaces. If he had built a giant, elevated garden that later generations would call a wonder of the world, why is there no Babylonian text that clearly says so? That question has haunted the story for more than a century. In 1899, the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey began major excavations at Babylon. He uncovered enormous royal and ceremonial structures. He even proposed one vaulted area as a possible location for the gardens. But the case never convinced everyone. The remains did not settle the mystery. If anything, they sharpened it. The wonder was famous. The city was real. Yet the match between the two refused to lock into place. Most of what people picture comes from writers who lived long after the Neo-Babylonian kings were gone. Diodorus Siculus and Strabo, writing in the 1st century BCE, described a raised garden of terraces, supported like a theatre, planted with large trees, and watered by hidden machinery that lifted river water upward. Their descriptions are vivid, but there is a catch. They wrote centuries after the period when the gardens were supposed to have been built. They were not eyewitnesses. They were preserving traditions, retelling earlier accounts, and perhaps blending stories that had already traveled across languages and empires. That does not make them useless. It just means they are part of the mystery, not the end of it. They tell us what educated people in the Greek and Roman world believed a wonder should look like. They do not tell us with certainty where that wonder really stood. Now the story takes a sharp turn north, to Assyria, and to a ruler who lived about a century before Nebuchadnezzar. His name was Sennacherib. He became king in 704 BCE and transformed Nineveh into an imperial capital. Unlike the uncertain garden at Babylon, Sennacherib's own inscriptions talk in detail about water, engineering, and royal landscape design. He boasted of canals cut through hills, of water brought from far away, and of devices that could raise water. Around Nineveh, Assyrian builders created large works to control and move water across dry land. Stone aqueducts carried it over valleys. Canal systems fed the capital. Palace reliefs show rich gardens, ordered trees, and terraced settings that look far closer to the old wonder tradition than anything securely found at Babylon. Suddenly the puzzle changes shape. The question is no longer just, where are Babylon's gardens? It becomes, what if the famous gardens were real, but belonged to Nineveh instead? At first that sounds unlikely. Babylon and Nineveh were not the same city. They belonged to rival empires. One was Babylonian, the other was Assyrian. So how could later writers mix them up? Part of the answer may lie in how ancient memory travels. Names shift. Capitals rise and fall. Later authors often relied on earlier texts that were already fragmentary. There is also the awkward fact that in some royal inscriptions, Mesopotamian rulers used grand titles and symbolic place names in ways that can confuse modern readers. Over time, the most famous city in the region could pull stories toward itself like a magnet. Babylon, after all, had enormous fame in the Greek imagination. If a story survived about an extraordinary eastern garden with ingenious irrigation, it may have been easier for later writers to pin it to Babylon than to preserve the older Assyrian setting. That is one modern theory, not proven. But it helps explain why the literary image is so strong while the Babylonian evidence is so thin. Whether the wonder stood in Babylon or Nineveh, one detail keeps returning in the ancient descriptions. Water had to be raised upward. That is the heart of the whole story. Mesopotamia was full of rivers, but a high garden was another matter. To keep trees alive on terraces in a hot climate, engineers needed a steady lift of water day after day. Greek and Roman writers imagined hidden devices doing that work. Sennacherib's inscriptions, meanwhile, point to real Assyrian skill in hydraulic engineering. He was not merely planting trees, he was remaking a landscape. Canals, sluices, embankments, and perhaps screw-like or chain-based lifting methods all enter the debate. We do not have the machine itself sitting in a museum, but we do have a world in which such engineering was possible, impressive, and politically useful. A king who could make water climb stone in the middle of dry country was doing more than gardening. He was staging power. He was turning command over nature into royal theatre. And that idea fits the wonder perfectly. There is still a third possibility, and in some ways, it is the most unsettling. Maybe the Hanging Gardens were never a single building that can be found and labelled. Maybe they were a story built out of several real traditions. Babylon had prestige. Assyria had documented garden culture and large waterworks. Greek writers loved marvels and tidy lists. By the time the Seven Wonders tradition hardened, a half-remembered royal park, a traveller's report, a lost inscription, and a famous city name may all have fused into one image, a mountain of green in the flatlands of the east. That would explain the strange mix of confidence and confusion around the gardens. Everyone knew the wonder. No one could point to it with certainty. This is why some historians think the gardens were legendary, or at least heavily embellished. Not invented from nothing, but polished by centuries of retelling until the original setting blurred beyond recovery. In the end, the Hanging Gardens remain famous for a reason that is almost backward. The other wonders are remembered because we can trace their stone, their foundations, their broken statues. The gardens are remembered because they slip away. They sit at the meeting point of archaeology, empire, translation, and myth. If Nebuchadnezzar built them, the evidence has not clearly surfaced. If Sennacherib built the true original at Nineveh, the ancient world may have filed it under the wrong city. And if the whole thing is a blended memory, then the wonder tells us less about a single monument than about how the ancient world imagined power itself. Walls that touched the horizon, kings who redirected rivers, and greenery made to rise where it should not. The mystery is still open. But that may be why the Hanging Gardens endured when so many certainties collapsed. They are not just a lost place. They are a reminder that history can preserve a marvel and misplace it at the same time.